In Nebraska, a state celebrated for its direct and honest governance, public officials engage in what has been termed the sanctuary games. These officials openly reject the notion of sanctuary policies, yet their behaviors indicate a stark contrast to their public statements, leading to a clear mismatch between what they say and what they do. This discrepancy has sparked significant discussions about the real motives driving Nebraska's policies towards illegal immigrants, impacting both local law enforcement operations and the trust within communities. The sanctuary games are characterized by a complex web of deceit where the actions of those in authority, from the state's top officials to local police forces, directly oppose their official stance. Nebraska, particularly Douglas County and its main city, Omaha, has emerged as a focal point in the national debate over sanctuary policies. In this context, the safeguarding of illegal aliens transcends simple policymaking. It has become a contentious arena where financial benefits, political tactics, and hidden influences merge to foster a sanctuary environment while claiming to uphold law and order. The ramifications of these games go far beyond the surface level of policy. They delve into the fundamental aspects of public trust, the integrity of the legal system, and the cohesion of Nebraska's social structure. This situation not only questions the sincerity of public officials, but also challenges the foundational elements of community governance and societal values in Nebraska. The governor of Nebraska, in alliance with mayors and law enforcement leaders across the state, has vocally and officially declared that their jurisdictions do not follow sanctuary policies. However, the reality on the streets tells a different story. In Nebraska, local law enforcement agencies show little cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement, often justifying this by referring to legal constraints that demand judicial warrants for any detention, essentially creating a de facto sanctuary environment. In Douglas County, the sheriff has implemented policies that explicitly refuse to honor ICE detainers unless they come with judicial backing, thereby setting up a sanctuary-like condition without the label. This approach allows for the protection of illegal immigrants from federal enforcement actions as long as judicial orders are not in place. Similarly, in Omaha, the police chief, acting on the mayor's orders, has made sure that checking someone's immigration status is not part of standard police procedures. This directive contributes to an atmosphere where undocumented individuals, including those involved in criminal activities, can operate with reduced fear of being handed over to federal immigration authorities. This practice effectively makes Omaha a sanctuary city in practice, where illegal aliens can feel secure from ICE interventions, even if the term sanctuary is not officially used. In a bid to conform to specific political narratives, the governor of Nebraska issued an executive order endorsing the current president's immigration policies. However, this act was nothing more than a symbolic gesture. It did not lead to any tangible enforcement or alteration in the state's approach to immigration. The ongoing maintenance of current practices without any real change clearly indicates that this executive order was primarily for show, aimed at shaping public perception rather than driving actual policy changes. This situation highlights a larger problem where state officials push responsibilities onto federal entities, thereby enabling local governance to maintain their sanctuary practices without facing direct accountability. By aligning publicly with federal policy, the governor and other state officials can claim they are following national directives while quietly continuing to ignore or undermine ICE actions. This strategic maneuver allows them to dodge responsibility for the sanctuary policies they implicitly support, creating a disconnect between their public statements and the reality of how immigration enforcement is handled within Nebraska. The city of Omaha serves as a prime example of an intricate game of passing the buck when it comes to responsibility for sanctuary policies. In this scenario, the police chief can assert that he's only following the directives handed down by the mayor. The mayor, in turn, can shift the blame to the city council, claiming that his actions reflect the collective decision-making or public will. This creates a continuous loop where accountability for the sanctuary policies in place is evaded by all parties involved. Each official involved in this chain can argue they are simply executing orders from above, acting in accordance with public sentiment, or limited by overarching legal or political constraints. However, the end result of these excuses and deflections is the same: the de facto protection of illegal immigrants from federal immigration enforcement. By not actively cooperating with ICE unless compelled by judicial orders, the city effectively operates as a sanctuary by default, where undocumented individuals can feel safer from deportation, even though no one openly claims responsibility for this outcome. This system of evasion not only undermines the enforcement of immigration laws but also erodes public trust in the governance process, as officials avoid accountability for their roles in these sanctuary practices. The sheriff of Douglas County has become adept at managing public perception, skillfully denouncing sanctuary policies in public forums while simultaneously enacting policies that closely resemble them in practice. This dual approach enables the sheriff to project an image that resonates with conservative values, focusing on law and order, which appeals to a significant portion of the electorate. However, beneath this facade, the actual cooperation with ICE is kept to a bare minimum, typically limited to instances involving serious criminal offenses. This calculated strategy serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it acts as a shield for illegal immigrants, allowing them to remain in the community with less fear of deportation, under the pretense of fostering community trust and using law enforcement discretion. Secondly, it responds to various pressures: social pressures from community groups advocating for immigrant rights, political leverage to appeal to different voter demographics, and financial benefits from sectors of the economy that depend on low-wage labor, including potential kickbacks or support from businesses that profit from this labor pool. By maintaining this dichotomy between public statements and private actions, the sheriff can navigate the complex political landscape, ensuring that he appears to uphold traditional law enforcement values while quietly supporting a sanctuary-like environment. This not only secures his position but also potentially increases his influence within local politics, all while avoiding direct accountability for the sanctuary practices that are effectively in place. The change in federal immigration policy during the previous administration has had a profound impact on how local practices are carried out in Nebraska. With a noticeable increase in illegal migrants entering the state, local law enforcement found themselves in a position where they could either intentionally or inadvertently overlook the immigration status of individuals. This situation is frequently justified by citing the ambiguous or lenient aspects of federal immigration policy, or by highlighting the absence of clear federal directives on how to handle such cases. This policy shift has created an intricate environment where local officials can engage in what's known as the sanctuary games. They can maintain a public stance that aligns with federal rhetoric, or even claim compliance with federal law while practically implementing policies that protect illegal immigrants from enforcement actions. By not directly confronting or challenging federal authority, these officials can dodge accountability for their sanctuary-like practices. They can argue that they are merely adapting to the federal landscape or are bound by the lack of clear guidelines, thereby continuing to offer a haven for illegal immigrants under the guise of local autonomy or community protection. This scenario not only underscores the collision between federal and local governance, but also exemplifies how shifts in policy can be leveraged to maintain or expand sanctuary practices without overt confrontation with national laws. Behind the public facade, a complex web of financial and political incentives drives the sanctuary policies in Nebraska. Elected officials across different levels of government use the presence of undocumented immigrants to their advantage, either for personal enrichment or to bolster their political standing. Funds that should be dedicated to public services such as housing, healthcare, and education are frequently misallocated or squandered. These officials also manipulate demographic changes to sway election results, capitalizing on new voter bases or changes in district compositions. The corruption goes beyond mere mismanagement. There are direct, illicit benefits derived from this system. Officials might receive bribes or kickbacks from businesses that thrive on employing undocumented workers at lower wages, or they might be involved in real estate ventures that profit from housing illegal tenants at higher rates or under substandard conditions. Moreover, public sector employees, including those in law enforcement and civic administration, are often part of an intricate network with organizations and groups funded by investors who see financial gain in the presence of illegal immigrants. These affiliations are kept under wraps, cultivated through backroom deals, exclusive gatherings, and private conversations rather than open forums. The public discourse, especially noticeable in arenas like city council meetings, is frequently accused of being saturated with misinformation or outright propaganda. These discussions tend to serve the agendas of these investor-backed entities, promoting narratives that favor continued sanctuary policies under the pretext of community support or economic necessity, rather than genuinely addressing the community's needs or concerns. This manipulation of information and policy for private gain not only undermines public trust but also distorts the democratic process, prioritizing profit over public welfare. The exposure of these manipulative practices has sparked a significant demand for accountability from the citizens of Nebraska. The discussion surrounding sanctuary policies has evolved from a mere debate on immigration to a broader critique of governance integrity and public trust. There's a clear, urgent call from the public to oust these officials via the electoral process, to end the sanctuary games, and to revert to a model of governance where public service trumps personal enrichment. The sanctuary games in Nebraska lay bare a troubling scenario where the sanctity of public service is undermined by greed, political tactics, and financial incentives. The stark contrast between what the public rightfully expects from their leaders and the actions of these officials has severely damaged trust in state institutions. This crisis affects not just Nebraska's capital, Lincoln, but also Douglas County and its largest city, Omaha, questioning the efficacy and morality of sanctuary policies on community development, public safety, and economic health. As these debates evolve, the pressing need for transparency, accountability, and a true dedication to public welfare has never been more evident. Nebraska is navigating these challenges in isolation, as each state deals with its unique set of corrupt officials involved in similar sanctuary maneuvers. This situation underscores the importance of deep examination into the motivations, incentives, and covert dealings of these officials who prioritize maintaining undocumented populations over addressing legitimate community issues. It's crucial to acknowledge the deceptive practices that shield these activities and to formulate effective counter-strategies against those who advocate for sanctuary policies for personal or political gain. The fight against these sanctuary games is not merely about immigration policy, but about restoring integrity to public office, ensuring that governance serves the community's interest rather than individual or corporate agendas. The goal is clear: to win back governance from those who play these games, reestablishing a system where public service is not just a slogan but a practiced reality.